I am Dylan, 36 years old, and last Saturday, my younger brother took a sledgehammer to a brand new $1,200 mountain bike in my backyard. He swung that iron head down with enough force to crack concrete, shattering the frame while my 6-year-old daughter screamed in terror. But before I tell you about the police cars, the eviction notice, and how my entire family ended up homeless because of that one swing, I want to know who is listening. Let me know which city or state you're watching from in the comments right now. I want to see where my allies are. It was supposed to be a celebration. The weather in Austin was perfect. That dry, crisp heat that begs for a barbecue. I had the smoker going since 5 a.m., slow cooking a brisket just the way my dad liked it. Or, at least, the way he claimed he liked it whenever I paid for the meat. I looked around my backyard. It was a good life. I'm a landscape architect, and I've spent the last 10 years clawing my way up from nothing to build a firm that actually matters. I designed this garden myself. The limestone patio, the native oaks providing shade, the fire pit where my wife, Emily, was currently setting out the sides. "Dylan, honey, do we have enough ice?" Emily asked, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked worried. She always looked worried when my family was coming over. "We have plenty," I said, kissing her forehead. "Relax. It's just burgers and brisket. What could go wrong?" I should have known better. My daughter, Sophie, was running circles around the patio, her giggles bouncing off the fence. In the corner of the yard, leaning against the old oak tree, was the surprise. A bright red, specialized mountain bike. It wasn't just a bike. It was a piece of engineering art. Dual suspension, hydraulic disc brakes, the works. It gleamed in the afternoon sun like a trophy. "Is that for Sophie?" Emily had asked earlier. "It looks a little big." "You'll see," was all I said. At 2 p.m., the gate latch clicked. My stomach tightened. It's a reflex I've developed over 3 decades. My parents, Linda and Robert, walked in first. Dad was holding a cheap 6-pack of light beer, and Mom was carrying her famous potato salad. The one she always made sure to mention cost her so much time to prepare. "Hi, sweetie." Mom breezed past me, barely brushing my cheek with hers. Her eyes immediately scanned the patio, not looking for my wife or granddaughter, but looking for things. Assessing. Calculating. "Oh, you got new patio furniture? Must be nice. Your brother is still using that folding table we gave him 10 years ago." And there it was, less than 30 seconds in. "Hello, Mom." "Hi, Dad," I said, taking the beer from my dad. "Where's Brendan?" "He's parking," Dad grunted. "Had a rough morning. Be easy on him." Brendan, my younger brother, the golden child. At 33 years old, Brendan was still finding himself. He had found himself in 3 failed startups, 2 DUIs, and about a dozen jobs he quit because the boss was disrespectful. The gate swung open again, harder this time, slamming against the wood. Brendan walked in, or rather, he stomped in. He looked disheveled. His shirt was untucked. His face flushed with that specific shade of red that meant he'd been pre-gaming long before he got here. Beside him was his wife, Sarah. Poor Sarah. She looked like she was trying to shrink into invisibility. She was holding the hand of their son, Lucas, my 7-year-old nephew. Lucas looked sad. He always looked a little sad these days. His clothes were clean but visibly worn, the knees of his jeans thinning out. "Uncle Dylan." Lucas perked up when he saw me. "Hey, buddy." I smiled, genuinely happy to see him. Brendan didn't say hello. He walked straight to the cooler, grabbed a beer, cracked it open, and took a long, aggressive swig. Then his eyes landed on the bike. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air grew heavy. "Nice ride," Brendan slurred, gesturing with his beer toward the red mountain bike. "How much that set you back? $1,000? $2? Something like that," I said, turning back to the brisket. "It's a gift." "A gift," Brendan repeated, his voice rising. "Must be nice. I'm over here struggling to pay rent. Sarah's driving a car with no AC, and you're buying toys." "Brendan, calm down," Sarah whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Please, not today." He shook her off violently. Don't tell me to calm down. Look at this. He gestured around my yard. Look at this house. Look at this food. And he buys a $1,000 bike for a 6-year-old girl who can't even reach the pedals. Sophie stopped running. She stood by her mother, eyes wide. Brendan. My mom stepped in, but not to stop him. She walked over and rubbed his back. It's okay, honey. We know. It's unfair. Your brother has always had better luck. Luck. That's what they called 80-hour work weeks and sleeping in my office for 3 years. Luck. It's not luck, Mom, Brendan spat. It's selfishness. He knows I needed a loan last week for the truck repair. He said no. But he has money for this. He walked over to the bike. He ran his hand along the frame. Brendan, step away from the bike, I said. My voice was low. I wasn't angry yet. I was just tired. Why? Scared I'll scratch it. He laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. You think you're so much better than me, Dylan? You think because you have the big house and the fancy degree, you're the man. He looked around. His eyes landed on my tool shed. The door was slightly ajar. I had been doing some fence repairs earlier. A sledgehammer was leaning just inside the doorway. Brendan, don't, I warned. I took a step forward. He moved faster. He grabbed the sledgehammer. It was heavy, but adrenaline seemed to give him strength. Brendan, Sarah screamed. No, Sophie yelled. Brendan marched back to the bike. He looked at me, a twisted grin on his face. Let's see how much you love your toys now. He raised the hammer. Brendan, stop, I shouted. Crack. The sound of metal meeting metal is sickening. It's a high-pitched screech followed by a dull thud. He brought the hammer down right on the center of the frame. The beautiful red aluminum buckled. He didn't stop. He swung again. Crash. The front wheel twisted into a figure 8. Spokes flew out like shrapnel. Sophie was screaming now, burying her face in Emily's stomach. Lucas was sobbing, his hands over his ears. Brendan swung a third time, destroying the handlebars. He was panting, sweating, his eyes wild. He dropped the hammer on the grass with a heavy thud. The silence that followed was deafening. The only sound was the sizzling of the brisket and the weeping of the children. Brendan wiped his mouth. There, he said, breathless. That's a lesson. Stop spoiling your kid while your family starves. I stood there, frozen. I looked at the wreckage. That bike was a masterpiece of engineering. Now it was scrap metal. My mother walked over. I expected her to slap him. I expected her to scream. Instead, she sighed and looked at me. Well, Dylan, she said, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive poison I knew so well. Maybe this is for the best. You shouldn't have bought it for her. Creates resentment. You know how sensitive Brendan is right now. You provoked him. I provoked him? I repeated. You rubbed his nose in it, Dad added, taking a sip of his beer. Just clean it up. It's insured, right? You're rich. You can buy another one. I looked at them. I looked at my parents, who were justifying violence. I looked at my brother, who stood there smirking, feeling like he had finally won a victory against me. And something inside me snapped. But it wasn't a hot snap. It wasn't a rage that made me want to punch him. It was a cold snap, like a glacier breaking off into the ocean. I stopped shaking. My heart rate slowed down. I looked at the bike. Then I looked at Lucas, who was crying into his mother's skirt. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. You're right, Mom, I said softly. Brendan laughed. See? Even he knows he's an asshole. I shouldn't have bought it, I continued, walking over to the wreckage. I picked up a piece of the twisted metal. Because you're right, Brendan. Sophie can't reach the pedals. It's way too big for her. I turned to face him. I locked eyes with him. That bike wasn't for Sophie, I said, my voice calm, carrying across the silent yard. I bought it for Lucas. It was his birthday present. The smirk vanished from Brendan's face instantly. His skin went from red to a ghostly pale gray. What? He whispered. I pointed to the custom decal on the shattered frame. It was scratched but still legible. It read, Rider, Lucas. Lucas has been talking about wanting to ride trails with me for months, I said, speaking clearly so everyone, especially my mother, could hear. I custom ordered this. Took 6 weeks to arrive. I was going to give it to him after dinner. I looked at Lucas. I'm sorry, buddy. Your dad just smashed your birthday present. Lucas looked at his father. The betrayal in that little boy's eyes was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever seen. Daddy, he whimpered. You broke my bike? Brendan stammered. I didn't know. You didn't tell me. Why didn't you tell me? Because it was a surprise, you moron, I said, my voice dropping an octave. But don't worry. Mom's right. It was a lesson. Dylan, wait. Mom started, her hands fluttering nervously. Let's not be hasty. Brendan made a mistake. He thought he was destroying my happiness. I cut her off. But he was destroying his own son's joy. And you cheered him on. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. What are you doing? Dad asked, putting his beer down. I'm taking pictures, I said, snapping a photo of the bike, then a photo of the sledgehammer, and finally, a photo of Brendan standing over it. For the police report. Police! Brendan's voice cracked. Dylan, come on. We're family. You can't call the cops on family. I looked up from my phone. Watch me. To understand why I called the police on my own brother, you have to understand that this wasn't about a bike. The bike was just the match that lit the fuse. The powder keg had been building for 36 years. Growing up, the dynamic was clear. I was the sturdy plow horse. Brendan was the show pony. If I got an A, it was expected. If Brendan got a C-, we went out for ice cream to celebrate his effort. My parents aren't evil people in the Disney villain sense. They are just weak. And weak people need someone to carry them, and someone to blame when they fall. I was the carrier. Brendan was the excuse. 10 years ago, when I started my landscape architecture firm, I was eating ramen noodles and living in a studio apartment the size of a shoebox. I didn't ask for a dime. In fact, I was sending money home. Dad had back problems that mysteriously prevented him from working but didn't prevent him from golfing, and Mom couldn't handle the stress of a 9-to-5. So I paid. I paid their utility bills. I paid for the new roof. 5 years ago was the turning point, though nobody knew it but me. I remember sitting in the office of a bankruptcy lawyer, not for me but for them. My parents had racked up $200,000 in debt, trying to fund one of Brendan's guaranteed business ventures. A craft brewery that never brewed a single pint. The bank was foreclosing on their house. The house I grew up in. They came to me weeping. Dylan, you have to help. Brendan didn't mean to lose the money. The market shifted. The market didn't shift. Brendan drank the inventory and hired his friends. I had just landed my first major commercial contract. A massive park renovation downtown. I had the capital. But I knew if I just gave them the money, they'd mortgage the house again for Brendan's next scheme. So I did something drastic. I bought the house. I bought the bad debt from the bank, paid it off, and transferred the deed to my name. I made a deal with my parents. You can live here rent-free for the rest of your lives, but I own the house. I pay the property taxes. I handle the insurance. You cannot borrow against it. You cannot sell it. They agreed gratefully, but they asked for one condition. Don't tell Brendan. It would crush his pride to know his big brother owns the roof over his head. I agreed. I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to be the good son. God, I was an idiot. For 5 years I played the role. I showed up to Sunday dinners. I listened to Brendan brag about his consulting gigs while I knew I was paying for the electricity powering the lights he was sitting under. I watched Sarah, his wife, slowly fade away. She used to be vibrant, a nurse with a great laugh. Now she looked like a ghost. I suspected Brendan was emotionally abusive, the constant little digs, the gaslighting, but I never had proof, just a gut feeling and the sad look in Lucas's eyes. Then there was the college fund incident. 2 years ago, I set up a small savings account for Lucas. I put $5,000 in it as a starter. I gave the access details to Brendan, telling him it was a custodial account, strictly for education. 6 months later, the bank called me. The account was overdrawn. Brendan had drained it. every cent. When I confronted him, he said, I needed it for an investment. I was going to pay it back double. Why do you always assume the worst? Mom defended him. Dylan, he's trying to build a future for his family. You have so much. Why are you counting pennies? $5,000 wasn't pennies. It was theft. But I let it slide. I refilled the account, but this time I locked it down so only I could access it. Brendan stopped talking to me for 3 months because I embarrassed him. That brings us back to last Saturday. As I stood there looking at the smashed bike, memories of every check I wrote, every crisis I averted, every time I swallowed my pride flashed before my eyes. I looked at Sarah. She was kneeling next to Lucas, wiping his tears. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red, terrified. But in that terror I saw something else. Pleading. She wasn't looking at me like a brother-in-law. She was looking at me like a lifeline. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was as if she was saying, do it. Please just do it. That nod was the permission I didn't know I needed. Police? Brendan scoffed, cracking another beer, though his hands were shaking. You're bluffing. You won't ruin Mom and Dad's barbecue. The barbecue is over, I said, hitting the call button. I put the phone to my ear. 911? Yes. I need to report a violent disturbance and destruction of property. Yes, the offender is still on the premises. He is armed with a sledgehammer. Dylan! Mom shrieked. She rushed at me trying to grab the phone. Hang up. Are you crazy? He's your brother. I sidestepped her easily. I'm giving the address now. Brendan threw his beer can on the ground. Foam exploded over the pristine limestone patio. Fine. You want a war? You got a war. I'll tell them you attacked me first. I have security cameras, Brendan. I pointed to the small black dome mounted under the eaves of the roof. 4K resolution. Audio recording. Captured everything. Brendan froze. He looked at the camera, then at the hammer, then at me. You set me up, he hissed. You bought that bike just to wave it in my face so I'd snap. This is entrapment. I bought a bike for your son, I said coldly. You're the one who decided to smash it. Sirens wailed in the distance. The sound was getting louder. Go home, Brendan, Dad said, finally speaking up. He looked old and tired. Just go before they get here. We'll fix this. No, I said. He stays. If he leaves, I give the cops his license plate and report a hit and run on my property. He stays right there. The next hour was a blur of blue lights and questions. Officer Miller, a guy I knew from the Rotary Club, took my statement. He watched the video footage on my phone. He shook his head. That's malicious mischief in the first degree, Dylan, Miller said. Value over $2,500? The bike was $1,200, I said. But the patio tiles he cracked when he dropped the hammer? Those are imported limestone. To replace them, I have to rip up the whole section. That's another $3,000. I wasn't lying, but I was definitely maximizing the damages. Brendan was cited and released with a court date, mainly because Mom was practically hyperventilating on the lawn and I didn't want an ambulance called too. As Brendan got into his beat-up truck, he leaned out the window. You're dead to me, he spat. And don't expect to see your nephew ever again. You just lost your family over a bicycle. He peeled out, tires screeching. Mom turned to me, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. I hope you're happy, Dylan. You just tore this family apart. I didn't tear it apart, Mom, I said, turning my back on her to comfort my crying daughter. I just stopped holding it together. Sunday morning, the day after the incident, was eerily quiet. I woke up with a headache, the kind that sits behind your eyes and throbs with every heartbeat. Emily had taken Sophie to her parents' house for the day to get her away from the toxicity. I was alone in the house. I expected an apology. I know, delusional. But a small part of me, the little boy who just wanted his big brother to like him, hoped Brendan would call, sober and ashamed. Instead, I got an email. Subject: restitution for emotional damages. It was from Brendan. I opened it, and my jaw nearly hit the desk. He wasn't apologizing. He was demanding I buy Lucas a new bike, a better one, and pay for his therapy, because I had traumatized his son by calling the police on his father. He also wanted me to drop the charges immediately, or he would expose my business practices on social media. I laughed. It was a dark, humorless laugh. He was threatening to expose my business? I run a transparent, high-end firm. My clients love me. What was he going to say? That I plant too many hydrangeas? Then the phone rang. It was Mom. Dylan, she started, her voice tight. We need to talk. Come over for lunch. I'm not coming over, Mom. This is not a request. Your father is very upset. His blood pressure is through the roof. If you want to kill him, keep doing what you're doing. The guilt card. Classic. Fine, I said. I'll be there in an hour. I drove over to the house. My house, technically. The lawn was overgrown. I made a mental note to call the landscaping crew I paid for. Brendan was supposed to be mowing it as his contribution. But clearly, that hadn't happened in weeks. When I walked in, it felt like an intervention. Mom and Dad were sitting at the kitchen table. Brendan wasn't there. Sit down, Dad said. I'll stand. Drop the charges, Dad said, pointing a finger at me. Now, today. Call Officer Miller and tell him it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He destroyed my property and traumatized my child. He was drunk. Mom cried out. He's under a lot of pressure. He feels inadequate compared to you, Dylan. Can't you see that? You waving your success in his face. It hurts him. I bought a gift for his son, I said, gripping the back of a chair. How is that waving success? You bought a bike he couldn't afford. Mom slammed her hand on the table. You made him feel like a failure as a father. You have to fix this. You have to buy Lucas the bike, apologize to Brendan for the police, and maybe help him with that truck loan. As a peace offering. I stared at them. They wanted me to pay. Again. No, I said. The silence was heavy. What did you say? Dad asked. I said no. No more bailouts. No more fixing his messes. And by the way, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I'm canceling the monthly transfer for your medical expenses starting today. If you have money to buy beer for Brendan's parties, you have money for your own copays. You can't do that. Mom gasped. That's $2,000 a month. Watch me. I turned and walked out. As I reached the door, Dad yelled, If you walk out that door, you're not our son anymore. You're just a cold-hearted landlord. Funny you should use that word. I muttered to myself as I got into my car. I drove home, feeling lighter than I had in years. But the storm wasn't over. It was just gathering strength. Monday morning, I went to work. I parked my car. A Panamera, my pride and joy, the one thing I bought purely for myself after landing the city park contract, in the reserved spot behind my office. Around 11 a.m., my receptionist, Jessica, buzzed me. Dylan, there's a problem in the parking lot. My heart sank. I ran outside. There, standing next to my car, was Brendan. He wasn't holding a hammer this time. He was holding a key. He had keyed the entire driver's side. A deep, jagged white line ran from the headlight to the taillight, gouging through the deep blue metallic paint. And on the hood, scratched into the finish, was the word, Snob. Brendan was leaning against his truck, filming it with his phone. Like the new paint job? He smirked as I approached. Matches your personality. I didn't run at him. I didn't yell. I stopped 10 feet away. You're filming this? I asked, genuinely baffled by his stupidity. Live streaming, bro, he laughed. Showing the world what happens when rich pricks mess with family. I looked up. The security camera on the back of my office building was blinking red. Okay, I said. Okay, he frowned. That's it. Okay? You just committed a felony, Brendan. Property damage over $2,500. Again. But this time it's a vehicle. And you live-streamed your confession. It's a civil matter, he yelled, suddenly looking unsure. It's a family dispute. No, I said, pulling out my phone. But I didn't call the police this time. I called Marcus Sterling. Marcus is my corporate attorney. He's a shark in a three-piece suit. He costs $600 an hour, and he is worth every penny. Marcus, I said, keeping my eyes on Brendan, I need you to file a restraining order, and I need you to prepare an eviction notice. Brendan laughed nervously. Eviction? You can't evict me. I don't live with you. No, I smiled. But you live in my house. I live in Mom and Dad's house, you idiot. We'll see, I said. Oh, and Marcus? Add a civil suit for damages to the Porsche. I want to garnish his wages, assuming he ever gets a job. Brendan stopped filming. What are you talking about? Go home, Brendan, I said, turning back to my office. Enjoy the house while you can. I walked inside, shaking. Not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally pushing the red button I had been guarding for 5 years. Tuesday was quiet. Too quiet. It was the calm before the tsunami. I met Marcus at his office downtown. The mahogany desk, the smell of old leather and expensive coffee. It was grounding. You're sure about this, Dylan? Marcus asked, looking over the deed to my parents' house. Eviction is messy, especially with family. In Texas, we have to give them notice, then file with the justice of the peace. It will take about 30 days. Do it, I said. Serve them, but wait until Saturday. Why Saturday? Because Saturday is Brendan's birthday, I said. Mom is throwing him a party at the house. She invited the whole extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They're planning to use the party to shame me back into the fold. They think I won't cause a scene in front of Aunt Clara and Uncle Mike. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And you want to serve the eviction notice? At the birthday party? No, I said. I want to serve it after I show them the truth. I left the office feeling like a general marshalling his troops. But I needed one more piece of ammunition. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello, Dylan? It's Sarah. Her voice was shaking so hard I could barely hear her. Sarah? Are you okay? Can you meet me? Please. Not at the house. Somewhere he won't look. We met at a dingy diner on the edge of town, the kind of place Brendan wouldn't be caught dead in because they didn't serve craft beer. Sarah looked terrible. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. When she took them off, I gasped. Her eye was swollen shut. A bruise, purple and ugly, blossomed across her cheekbone. Did he do this? I asked, my fists clenching under the table. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. Sunday night, after the police left, he blamed me, said I didn't defend him enough, said I was looking at you inappropriately. Sarah, we need to go to the police right now. No, she grabbed my hand. Not yet. If I leave now, he'll hunt me down. He'll take Lucas. He threatened to tell the courts I'm unstable, that I'm on pills. He hides my medication, Dylan. He gaslights me. I have a lawyer, I said. The best in the city. He deals with custody. I don't have money, Dylan. I do. She broke down sobbing. It took 5 minutes for her to compose herself. Then, she reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I heard you on the phone. About the eviction, she whispered. I know you own the house. I found the papers in his truck. He stole mail from your parents' mailbox a few years ago. He knows Dylan. Brendan knows you own the house. He's known for 2 years. My blood ran cold. He knows? And he didn't tell Mom and Dad. No. He's been blackmailing them in a way. He tells them he's protecting the house from the bank, asking them for money to pay the lawyers to keep the foreclosure away. He's been taking money from them to save the house that you already saved. I felt sick, physically sick. My brother wasn't just a leech. He was a predator. And there's this. Sarah slid a stack of bank statements across the table. He's not just unemployed. He's gambling. Online poker. Tens of thousands of dollars. That college fund you set up? It went to a casino in Oklahoma. I looked through the papers. It was a paper trail of destruction. Embezzlement from my parents, theft from me, gambling debts. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because I want out, Sarah said, her voice turning steel hard. I want a divorce. I want full custody of Lucas. And I want to watch him burn. You'll have it, I promised her. Saturday. Bring Lucas. Be ready to leave. Saturday. The party, I said. It's going to be a birthday he'll never forget. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I felt like a spy in a Cold War movie. I hired a private security detail, 2 off-duty cops, to be on standby near the house on Saturday. I didn't want violence, but with Brendan you had to expect it. I compiled the video of the bike smashing. I compiled the video of the car keying. I scanned the documents Sarah gave me. I scanned the deed to the house. I put it all on a USB drive. Friday night, Mom texted me. Mom, please come tomorrow. Just for an hour. Uncle Mike wants to see you. Put family first, Dylan. Be the bigger man. I stared at the screen. Be the bigger man. The mantra of my life. Being the bigger man just meant making yourself a bigger target. I replied, I'll be there. I didn't sleep Friday night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Emily breathe. You don't have to do this, she whispered. She was awake too. Yes, I do, I said. For Sophie. For Lucas. For Sarah. If I don't stop him now, he'll destroy Lucas the way he's trying to destroy me. Just be careful, she said. I'm done being careful, I said. I'm going to be decisive. Saturday arrived with a menacing heat. The air was thick, humid, suffocating. I pulled up to the house at 1 p.m. The driveway was full. Uncle Mike's truck, Aunt Clara's sedan, and a dozen other cars. They were all there. The clan. I parked my rental car, since the Porsche was in the shop, on the street. I adjusted my blazer. I had the USB drive in my pocket. Marcus Sterling was parked 2 blocks away in his black Mercedes, waiting for my text. I walked up the driveway. I could hear music, laughter, the smell of barbecue, cheap hot dogs this time, not brisket. When I entered the backyard, the conversation stopped. It was like a scene from a Western movie when the outlaw walks into the saloon. 30 pairs of eyes turned to me. Brendan was standing by the grill holding a beer. He looked smug. He was wearing a new shirt, probably bought with money he swindled from Mom. Well, look who decided to show up. Brendan boomed, playing the jovial host. The prodigal brother. Uncle Mike walked over, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Good to see you, Dylan. Glad you boys worked it out. Family is everything, right? Hi, Uncle Mike, I said, not smiling. Mom rushed over, whispering in my ear. Thank you for coming. Now, please, just apologize to him quietly. Give him a card with some cash, and let's move on. I didn't bring a card, I said loud enough for people nearby to hear. That's okay, Mom hissed. Just mingle. I walked to the center of the patio. There was a large flat-screen TV set up under the awning, playing a slideshow of photos. Brendan as a baby, Brendan graduating high school, barely, Brendan's wedding, the shrine of Brendan. I walked over to the laptop controlling the slideshow. What are you doing? Brendan asked, stepping closer. Gonna show some embarrassing baby photos? Something like that, I said. I plugged in the USB drive. Excuse me, everyone, I shouted. My voice carried well. Years of directing construction crews helped. Can I have your attention? The chatter died down. Everyone looked at me. Mom looked panicked. Dad looked angry. I know we're here to celebrate Brendan, I began. And my mother asked me to be the bigger man, to put family first. So, I prepared a little tribute to my brother. Brendan crossed his arms, looking suspicious but curious. He loved attention. He thought maybe I had caved, that I had made a montage of our brotherhood. I hit the spacebar. The screen didn't show baby photos. It showed 4K footage of my backyard. The sound of the sledgehammer hitting the bike boomed through the outdoor speakers. Crack, crunch. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aunt Clara covered her mouth. What is this? Mom shrieked. Turn it off. No, I said firmly. Watch. On the screen, Brendan's face was twisted in rage as he destroyed the bike. Then, the audio played. That's a lesson. Stop spoiling your kid while your family starves. Then the clip changed. The parking lot. Brendan keying my Porsche. The scratching sound was excruciating. Live streaming, bro. Showing the world. The silence in the yard was absolute. Brendan looked like he was going to vomit. You illegal recorded me, he shouted. And here, I clicked the next slide. It was a scan of the bank statement. This is the custodial account for Lucas's college fund. Withdrawal, $5,200. Location, Choctaw Casino. Liar. Brendan lunged at me. Two large men stepped out from the side gate. My security detail. They blocked Brendan without breaking a sweat. And this, I clicked again, is a statement from Mom and Dad's bank account, showing $30,000 withdrawn over the last 2 years for legal fees to stop a foreclosure. I turned to my parents. They were pale, trembling. Mom, Dad, I said gentler. There is no foreclosure. There hasn't been for 5 years. Because I paid it off. I projected the deed of trust on the screen. My name, Dylan Hart, was listed clearly as the owner. I own this house, I announced. I bought it to save you, and Brendan has been stealing from you, pretending to pay a bank that doesn't exist. The crowd erupted. Uncle Mike looked at Dad. Is this true, Robert? Dylan pays for this house. Dad couldn't speak. He just stared at the screen. Brendan was shaking his head. It's fake. It's all Photoshop. It's not fake, Brendan. Sarah's voice cut through the noise. She stepped forward, holding Lucas's hand. She looked terrified, but she didn't stop. I gave him the bank statements. You stole from your parents. You stole from your son. You bitch. Brendan screamed, trying to get past the security guards. I'll kill you. That's enough, I said. I texted Marcus. Now, Brendan, I said, my voice cold as ice. Happy birthday. I got you 2 gifts. I pointed to the driveway. A police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing but no siren. Officer Miller stepped out, along with 2 other officers. Brendan Hart, Miller asked. We have a warrant for your arrest. Felony criminal mischief, grand larceny, and domestic assault. Brendan tried to run toward the back fence, but the security guards grabbed him. They pinned him down. The party guests, his own family, watched in horror as he was handcuffed face down in the grass. Dylan, Mom screamed, falling to her knees. Stop this. He's your brother. And here's the second gift, I said, ignoring her. Marcus Sterling walked into the yard. He looked out of place in his Italian suit, but he commanded the room. He handed a stack of papers to Dad. Mr. and Mrs. Hart, Marcus said calmly. I am representing your landlord, Dylan Hart. This is a 30-day notice to vacate the premises. Your tenancy is terminated effective immediately. Eviction, Dad wheezed, clutching his chest. You're kicking us out? This is our home. It was your home, I said, stepping closer to them. When I bought it, the deal was you lived here in peace. But you let a monster live here. You let him steal from you. You let him abuse his wife. You let him terrorize my daughter. And you defended him. You chose him. I looked at Brendan, who was being dragged to the police car, screaming profanities at me. You chose the golden child, I said. Now you can go live with him. I hear the county jail has visitation. I turned to Sarah. Let's go. Sarah picked up Lucas. I grabbed their bags, which she had hidden behind the shed earlier. As we walked out, leaving my parents weeping in the ruins of their party, leaving the extended family staring in shock, I didn't look back. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't guilt. It was freedom. The hours following the party were a chaotic blur, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trying to clean up the mess. I was the one who had finally poured the bleach. I drove Sarah and Lucas to a secure hotel I had booked. A nice suite, far from where Brendan's cronies could find them. Is Daddy coming? Lucas asked from the back seat, his voice small. No, buddy, I said, catching Sarah's eye in the rearview mirror. Daddy is going to be away for a long time. When I got back to my own house, Emily was waiting on the porch with a glass of scotch. She didn't say a word. She just handed me the glass and hugged me. I buried my face in her hair and finally, after 5 years of holding it together, I let out a shuddering breath. "It's done," I whispered. "I'm proud of you," she said. But the silence didn't last long. My phone began to blow up. First, it was Aunt Clara. "Clara. Dylan. I can't believe what happened. Is it true? About the house?" "Me, yes, Aunt Clara. It's all true. Clara, your mother is hysterical. She says you tricked them." "Me. The deed is public record. There was no trick." Then came the texts from Dad. "Dad, how could you? In front of everyone? You humiliated us." "Me, you humiliated yourselves when you defended a thief and an abuser." "Dad, where are we supposed to go? We have no savings." "Me, ask Brendan for the money he stole. Or maybe you should have thought about that before you told me I was just a landlord." I blocked his number. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, pressing that block contact button on my own father. But I knew if I listened to his voice, I would cave. I would write a check. I would fix it. And I couldn't do that anymore. The next morning, Sunday, I went to the house with the movers I had hired. Not to move them out, but to secure the property. The party debris was still scattered across the lawn. Deflated balloons, half-eaten cake, red Solo cups. It looked like a battlefield. Mom was sitting on the porch swing, staring at nothing. She looked 10 years older than she had yesterday. "He's in jail, Dylan," she said without looking at me. "Denied bail because of the flight risk and the threats against Sarah." "Good," I said. "He's your brother. He's a criminal, Mom. He beat his wife. He stole your retirement. And you let him." She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with venom. "I never asked you to buy the house. I never asked for your charity. You begged for it," I snapped. "You cried in my office 5 years ago. Don't rewrite history. You just wanted power over us." She spat. "You always were jealous of Brendan. You wanted to hold the strings." I laughed. It was a sad, tired sound. "I didn't want power. I wanted parents. I wanted you to look at me the way you look at him. Just once. But even now, with him in a cell and me standing here, the only one who has ever actually taken care of you, you still choose him." I walked to the door and taped the official eviction notice to the wood. "You have 29 days left," I said. "Start packing." "We won't go," she whispered. "Then the sheriff will remove you. And unlike me, he won't be polite about it." I walked away. As I reached my car, I saw a neighbor, Mr. Henderson, watching from his lawn. He had seen everything over the years. The arguments, Brendan's drunken rages, my late-night visits to fix the roof. He gave me a slow nod, a nod of respect. I nodded back. The fallout was swift. Within a week, the family was divided. But surprisingly, not against me. Aunt Clara and Uncle Mike, having seen the proof of the theft, sided with me. They were furious that Mom and Dad had enabled Brendan to steal from the family pot. Sarah filed for divorce on Tuesday. With the video evidence and the police report, she was granted an emergency protective order and full temporary custody of Lucas. I hired her a shark of a divorce lawyer, a friend of Marcus. Brendan was facing serious time. The DA wasn't lenient. Assault, grand larceny, felony mischief. He was looking at 5 to 10 years. But the sweetest victory wasn't the legal one. It was the silence. For the first time in my adult life, my phone didn't ring with a crisis I had to pay for. My bank account wasn't being drained by guilt. I sat on my patio that evening, looking at the empty spot where the red bike used to be. "Daddy," Sophie walked out holding a drawing. "Hey, princess. I drew a new bike," she said, handing me a crayon drawing of a blue bicycle. "For Lucas." I pulled her into my lap. "That's beautiful, honey. We'll get him a new one. A better one." "Is Uncle Brendan a bad man?" she asked innocently. I thought about it. Was he born bad? Or was he made bad by parents who never told him no? "He made bad choices," I said. "And now he has to live with them. And Grandma and Grandpa? They made choices too. I looked at the sunset. The storm was over. The wreckage was vast, but the air was clear. I had lost my parents, I had lost my brother, but I had saved myself. And more importantly, I had saved Lucas and Sarah. I took a sip of my drink. Worth it, I whispered to the wind. 1 year. It takes exactly 365 days for the Earth to orbit the sun, but it takes a hell of a lot less time for a world to completely shift on its axis. It was a Tuesday in October when the final gavel fell. I was sitting in the back of the courtroom not because I had to be there, but because I needed the closure. I needed to see the credits roll on the horror movie my life had been for 3 decades. Brendan stood before the judge. He looked thinner. The jail jumpsuit hung off his frame, and that arrogant, frat boy smirk was gone, replaced by a hollow, sunken look of disbelief. He kept glancing back at the gallery, looking for Mom and Dad. They were there, but they weren't the defiant, proud parents they used to be. Dad was using a walker now. Stress had triggered a minor stroke 3 months ago, and Mom looked frail, her hair graying at the roots because she could no longer afford the bi-weekly salon visits. "Mr. Hart," Judge Reynolds said, looking over his spectacles, "you have shown a remarkable lack of remorse throughout these proceedings. You defrauded your elderly parents. You stole from your brother. You assaulted your wife. And you destroyed property in a fit of jealous rage." Brendan tried to speak. "Your Honor, I just need a second chance. My brother, he has plenty of money. It was a misunderstanding. For years." The judge cut him off. "State penitentiary, with eligibility for parole in 2. I watched Mom cover her face with her hands. She didn't scream this time. She just wept silently. The fight had gone out of her. When the bailiff handcuffed Brendan, he turned and locked eyes with me. I expected rage. I expected him to scream that he would kill me. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. He realized finally that the safety net was gone. I wasn't going to catch him. Mom couldn't catch him. He was falling and he was going to hit the bottom. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright autumn sunlight. The air tasted crisp. Tasted like justice. I drove to a small park on the north side of town. A project my firm had just completed. The landscape was lush, with native grasses and limestone pathways. Waiting for me at the picnic area were Sarah, Lucas, Emily, and Sophie. Sarah was unrecognizable. The woman who used to flinch if a door slammed too hard was now laughing, her head thrown back as she pushed Lucas on the swing. She was working as a head nurse at a private clinic now, making her own money, paying her own rent. She wore bright colors. She looked 10 years younger. "Uncle Dylan." Lucas jumped off the swing and ran to me. He looked healthy. He had grown 3 inches. And most importantly, the sadness was gone from his eyes. "Hey, buddy." I high-fived him. "How's school?" "I made the soccer team," he beamed. "Mom says you're coming to the first game. Wouldn't miss it for the world." We sat down for a picnic. It was simple. Sandwiches, juice boxes, chips. But it felt like a feast. "Did it happen?" Sarah asked quietly, handing me a soda. "For years," I said. She nodded slowly. She didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped about an inch, a physical release of tension she had been carrying for a decade. "He wrote to me," she said, "from jail, asking me to sell his truck and put money in his commissary account." "What did you do?" "I tore it up," she said, taking a bite of her sandwich. "I sold the truck to pay for Lucas's braces." We laughed. It was a good, clean sound. But the reality of my parents' situation was harder to ignore. I hadn't spoken to them since the eviction, not really. Marcus, my lawyer, handled everything. They had tried to fight the eviction, claiming squatters' rights and elder abuse. But the paperwork was ironclad. They were out within the 30 days. I knew, through the grapevine of Aunt Clara, that they had moved into a small, 1-bedroom apartment in a rougher part of town. Their credit was shot because Brendan had opened credit cards in their names. Another little secret that came out during the investigation. I thought I was immune to feeling anything for them. I thought the wall I built was impenetrable. Then, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I ran into my mother. I was at the grocery store, the discount one on the edge of town where I sometimes went to buy bulk supplies for charity drives. I turned the aisle near the canned goods, and there she was. She was wearing a vest. A blue employee vest. She was stocking shelves. My mother, who had always prided herself on being a homemaker and looked down on service workers, was struggling to lift a heavy box of canned peaches onto a high shelf. Her hands were shaking. I froze. My instinct, that deep-wired primal instinct of a son, was to rush forward and help her. To grab the box. To write a check. To fix it. I took a step forward. Then, she saw me. The box slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. A few cans dented. We stood there for a long moment, staring at each other across a spilled case of peaches. "Dylan," she whispered. She looked tired. Her face was lined with worry. You shop here?" "Just picking up some things," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Your father isn't doing well," she said immediately. "No, hello. No, how are you?" Just straight to the guilt. "The medication costs are so high, and the heating bill in the apartment. It's drafty, Dylan. He freezes at night." I felt that familiar tug in my chest, the hook trying to snag my heart. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "We have no one." She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "Brendan is gone. The family won't talk to us because of what you showed them. We are all alone, Dylan. We're your parents. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means everything," I said softly. "It means you were the people supposed to protect me, not use me as a bank account for your favorite son." "We made mistakes," she cried, causing a few shoppers to look over. "But look at us. I'm stocking shelves at 65 years old. Is this what you wanted? Are you satisfied?" I looked at her vest. I looked at her hands. And for the first time I saw the truth. This wasn't my fault. This wasn't a punishment I inflicted. This was the natural consequence of 30 years of financial irresponsibility and enabling a predator. "I'm not satisfied, Mom," I said honestly. "It breaks my heart. But I didn't put you here. You put yourselves here when you chose to mortgage your future to bail out Brendan for the 10th time. You put yourselves here when you let him steal from you and defended him for it. So you're just going to walk away?" she hissed, the anger returning, masking her shame. "You're going to let your mother lift heavy boxes while you drive a Porsche?" "Yes," I said. "I am." I turned my cart around. "If you walk away, don't come to my funeral," she screamed after me. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked to the checkout, paid for my items, and walked out. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes. I didn't cry. I just breathed. I realized that saving them would only mean drowning with them. If I gave them money today, Brendan would have it in his commissary account by tomorrow, or they would use it to hire a lawyer to appeal his sentence. I couldn't save people who didn't want to be saved. I could only save the innocent ones. I thought of Lucas and Sophie. They were the future. My parents were the past. That night, I received a notification on my phone. A deposit. It was from the court. Restitution payment. $14.50. It was from Brendan's prison work wages. He was earning pennies an hour, and the court was garnishing it to pay back the $5,200 he stole from Lucas. I stared at that number. $14.50. It was a pathetic amount, but it was the first honest money my brother had ever paid anyone in his life. I transferred it immediately to Lucas's new college fund. The dawn had finally broken. The storm had passed. The landscape of my life had changed forever. Some trees were uprooted, some structures destroyed, but the foundation was stronger than it had ever been. I was standing in my backyard again. The imported limestone patio had been repaired. The hydrangeas were in full bloom, massive heads of blue and purple nodding in the breeze. The smoker was going, the smell of brisket once again filling the air. It was almost the exact same scene as the day of the Sledgehammer incident. But the feeling was entirely different. There was no tension, no walking on eggshells, no scanning the driveway with dread, waiting for a chaotic force to arrive. Sophie was riding her bike in circles on the grass. Not the mountain bike that was long gone, but a nice standard cruiser. And riding next to her on a brand new high-end blue Trek bike was Lucas. "Look, Uncle Dylan. No hands," Lucas shouted, letting go of the handlebars for a second before grabbing them again. Laughing. Sarah was sitting with Emily by the fire pit, drinking iced tea. They were looking at brochures for nursing schools. Sarah was planning to get her master's degree. I leaned against the old oak tree, the rough bark pressing into my back. This tree had seen everything. It saw the violence. It saw the police. And now it saw the peace. I realized something as I watched them play. For years, I thought being a man meant enduring. I thought it meant absorbing pain so others wouldn't have to. I thought being a good son meant lighting myself on fire to keep my parents warm. I was wrong. Being a man, being a father, being an architect of your own life, it means drawing lines. It means building walls not to keep people out, but to protect the people inside. I had spent so much time trying to design the perfect landscape for my clients, creating harmony and balance, while letting my own personal landscape be overrun by weeds and poison ivy. "Penny for your thoughts?" I turned. Uncle Mike was standing there holding a beer. He had become a regular at our Sunday dinners. "Just thinking about how quiet it is," I said. "It's a good quiet," Mike nodded. He took a sip. "You know, I visited your folks last week." I stiffened slightly. "How are they?" "Bitter," Mike said bluntly. "They spend all day talking about how ungrateful you are. They have a shrine to Brendan in the living room. They're waiting for him to get out so they can all live together again. They'll drag him down or he'll drag them down," I said. "Probably both." "Probably," Mike agreed. "But that's not your problem anymore, Dylan. You broke the cycle. That's the hardest thing a man can do. Most people, they just pass the trauma down to the kids like a family heirloom. You refused the inheritance." I looked at Lucas. He had fallen off his bike. In the past, Brendan would have screamed at him to man up or laughed at him. I watched as Lucas stood up, brushed off his knees, and looked at me. I gave him a thumbs up. "You're good, buddy. Get back on." He grinned, hopped back on the seat, and pedaled away. "Yeah," I said to Mike. "I refused the inheritance." I walked over to the grill and opened the lid. The meat was perfect. Tender, smoky, ready. "Dinner's ready," I called out. The kids dropped their bikes, carefully using the kickstands this time, and ran to the table. We sat down. We held hands. "I'm thankful for this food," Sophie said. "And for Lucas being here." "I'm thankful for Uncle Dylan," Lucas said. I looked at my family. My real family. The one built on mutual respect, not obligation. The one built on love, not manipulation. I raised my glass. "To the future." "To the future," they echoed. I took a drink. It was cold and refreshing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a blocked number. I knew who it was. It was Sunday night. The weekly guilt call from the apartment on the other side of town. I looked at the screen for a second. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt detached, like looking at a storm cloud on the horizon that was moving away from you. I pressed the side button, silencing the call. I put the phone face down on the table. "Everything okay?" Emily asked, touching my hand. I looked at her, then at the kids, then at the beautiful garden I had built with my own hands. "Yeah," I smiled. "Everything is perfect. Thank you for journeying with me through the wreckage and the rebuilding of my life. If you take anything away from my story, let it be this: blood does not obligate you to tolerate abuse. We are often taught that family is everything, that we must forgive endlessly and provide indefinitely. But there is a difference between supporting family and financing your own destruction. My parents and brother relied on the sunk cost fallacy. The idea that because we had invested so much time in history, I couldn't walk away. But you can. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. By saying no to the toxic members of my family, I was able to say yes to the innocent ones, to Sophie, to Lucas, and to myself. You are the architect of your own life. Do not let anyone else hold the sledgehammer. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to save your own peace? Or do you believe I was too harsh on my aging parents? Drop a good in the comments if you agree that protecting your peace is the most important thing, or share your story below. I read every single one.